everybody, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back again with another great episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. Certainly that is the case of today's guest. But before we get there, again, let's draw attention to my website, www.markpattisonnfl.com. And we've got over 240 amazing podcasts of incredible people doing amazing things. And I would appreciate a ratings and review through Apple. Helps elevate the popularity of the show. We've got hundreds of thousands of downloads, but we need to continue to spread the love around the world. So check it out. You can find my podcast, Finding Your Summit, on any podcast stream that is out there. Also, of course, you can see the epic NFL film that was shot of my incredible Everest journey going up and down the mountain, which all ties right back into my daughter, Millie, who has epilepsy, of which then also ties on the same tab, philanthropy, opportunity to donate to Higher Ground, goes directly there and helps people like my daughter who have epilepsy and others with empowerment, especially those military folks who have adaptive issues and cognitive things that they've experienced overseas at war and things like that. So please go check that out. And finally, you can check out my YouTube channel. I just launched it recently. We're trying to get enough subscribers on there. Roderick, I hope you're going to subscribe. Once we get to 1,000, we start making a little bit of money, and all that money is going to go to Higher Ground. Again, trying to help others. So really trying to pay it forward. So on that note, let me get into today's wonderful guest. He is the one, the only Roderick Sewell. Roderick, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mark. How about you?
Well, I'm doing fine. Now, listen, I've been in touch with, actually, I've been reading a book by my longtime friend, Paul McDonald. He's a big star quarterback, big star athlete at USC, went on into the NFL, played, and has had this very successful career. And about, 10 years ago, he was going through a bump, and he discovered some of the same things that I have discovered over time, which was, when you think your situation is bad, maybe it isn't so bad, especially when they start talking to other people. And I'm sure that you can say the same thing about your particular life. We're going to get into that. And that's how I was first exposed to you. So I called up my buddy, Paul, and I say, hey, Paul, I got to have this guy, Roderick, on my podcast. It is about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And sure enough, you responded to me. I'm so grateful for that. I saw this very moving piece that they had done on you for their website that they're trying to get off the ground. And you've just got a great story. It's a great story of human endurance and overcoming and determination and grit and all those different things that somebody needs. When you take on some of the things, not only you challenge, but you're doing some things that are really hard. I haven't done an Ironman. We're going to get into that. So first of all, I'll stop talking here, but if you can just tee up the story. I know you've told it, many times, but it just kind of like helps frame up your story. Like if after you give it your little bit, if we just stop there, it'd be amazing that you're here and talking and positive and all those things. But the fact that we're going to go on and talk about all this amazing stuff you've done. So if you would do that, just kind of tee up for the audience, like what you're born with and what challenges that you had growing up as a small kid.
For sure. So I was born with, of course, Jimmy wants to say hello now. Our dog, Jimmy, if y'all haven't seen him already. So I was born with missing tibias in both of my legs, causing my legs to be amputated when I was 1.5 years. And I got my first pair of prosthetics when I was going on 3 years old. And it was a new life for myself and my family. I didn't know anything else. My first steps were taking on prosthetics. So, it's for me, it's just like a normal day to day. It's kind of like putting your shoes on before you go out. And for my mother, who was raising me as a single mother, she didn't really know what to expect. She was just any amputees she had seen were individuals who were in wheelchairs, and they were not walking on prosthetics. They were all asking for some type of assistance. And so she immediately got worried. What is going to become of my son? Is he going to be like a beggar? Is he going to be somebody who can fend for himself? All these questions, coming up when I'm, barely speaking. So time goes on, and I definitely just kind of learned to live life the way I I'll play the cards that I'm dealt. Um, According to her, when I was a kid, I didn't care or I didn't know what a disability was because I just used what I had. So I was climbing all around the household, climbing on cabinets. When I wanted to go outside, actually, and I should definitely message them, I started using Tupperware cups because my legs are amputated. I'm a double above knee amputee. My legs are right above the knee on both sides. And so I would just slide on these Tupperware cups and they were like the right amount of lean, and you could just throw those things off a tower and they would bounce and be fine. So we threw those on and I was able to run around outside with my cousins. And from there, that was my freedom. I was climbing trees, doing everything. And as time went on, my legs, obviously I'm growing more and more. For somebody wearing prosthetics, for an adult, you may be going in to get changed every 2 years at max, or depending on the individual. But for a child, you're growing so much that you're constantly going back to get better sockets and a better fit. And so just as time went on, things got more expensive. And that's where my mother, who was working for the Navy at the time, just had to make a decision. With her job, she didn't get any durable medical equipment through her insurance, which is what I needed. And since she couldn't get that, the only thing she could think of was, okay, I can quit my job, file for unemployment, and then I can get basic insurance. And with that insurance, I'll be able to get basic coverage for him to get his, younger prosthetics, and we can get constant care in that way. And it worked, but it had a side effect. It got me the prosthetics I needed from when I was young to I think I was like 13. And one of the best sacrifices she could have made for me. The downside was, she had no job. We had no money. And she was a single mother who is very, very proud. Maybe slightly stubborn sometimes. I don't know if she'll be upset with me saying that, but she's definitely like a tough cookie. She's a hard-headed woman. And she didn't care that it was just going to be her and her child pretty much out on their own. She sold her car. We moved out of our house into an apartment. And eventually we ended up homeless due to just not being able to have any income. And as time went on, we relied on family, we relied on support, especially going from shelter to shelter. But it was definitely kind of a dark time where we didn't know what was going to be next.
Let me before you go from there.
Yes, sir.
What is it like being homeless? I mean, obviously it's awful, and I saw the movie. I think it was called The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith, and he turns out to be this amazing success story. But to get there, he was on the edge, and he was homeless, and he got thrown out, and he was always being super scrappy, and they had to sleep on the street and all that kind of stuff. And as you were telling the story, I'm trying to think about how whacked out is our system that somebody has to quit their job in order to actually get assistance to get prosthetics, to help you out, right? That just doesn't make any sense to me. It's all upside down. And the other thing I also want to explain to the audience is that I had a guy on about 15 podcasts ago, maybe it was 20, I can't remember exactly, but there's this heroic story where he was out off the Florida Keys. He was diving with his parents, and he just, he was the first one in the water, and there was a big wave that was going to come, and so his mom floored it, and as it floored, the whole boat like reared up and banked hard left. And when it did it, he was kind of towards the back of the boat, and the propeller like cut both of his feet off. And so, down to the bottom of the ocean go his feet and his flippers and everything else. So he has had to wear prosthetics for most of his life, or since, I guess this happened when he was like 18 years old. And now he's like 32. So the last 12 years he's had to do this, but he was educating me, which you're kind of doing the same thing. And he was essentially saying that what people don't understand, that especially for younger kids, it's like a pair of shoes. You're growing. And so every single time you grow, you have to fit yourself for a new prosthetic. It's not a one size fits all, right? And so this plays into what you were just saying, which is you're a young kid, and now your mom has to quit her job in order for you to get prosthetics so that you can continue to get these as you're getting bigger and more powerful and everything else. And so, I mean, it's a hard road. But back to my question, like, what was that like, if you could remember, being homeless on the streets? I just can't imagine that.
I mean, it was, I remember my mom and I went to go see Pursuit of Happiness, and we both like stared at each other because it was so surreal. Especially, I don't know if you remember the scene where he's with his son in the bathroom, and his son's trying to sleep, and there's somebody like trying to break in the door because they need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That scene, I'll never forget. We turned and looked at each other, and I think my mom saw tears in my eyes, and I can't remember if she was crying, but I was definitely like, this is hitting home because this is exactly what we're going through right now. Obviously, we're not sleeping in bathrooms, but we're definitely jumping shelter to shelter. We're staying in certain places where you got to sleep on cots. She made sure I never slept outside. That's one thing. She made sure we had somewhere to stay. And that's just, I applaud her for that. But the shelters we were in were very much different facilities that were being used in the building. So we had to be in at a certain hour and then out by a certain hour. And if you didn't show up at those hours, then you had to be, you couldn't stay. So from there, and all this going down, I'm not realizing that it's because of the insurance. I didn't know why this was happening. It's not until later in life that I put the pieces together, talking to my mom about everything that we went through. But yeah, we were shelter to shelter. I stayed with my grandmother, my mom's sisters a couple times. And it was just very much, like no light at the end of the tunnel. It was consistently like we were 6 months in one place, then get an apartment, and then 6 months in another shelter, then we might get an apartment. And we just couldn't get ahead,
Did you, again, this is through the brain of a kid, right? An adolescent brain. Did you in any way have any kind of resentment towards your mother? Like,
no,
yeah.
Not it. I definitely understand where you're coming from. The resentment came when I was typical teenager. Like I was just so, just a hard-headed teenager. And that's where I remember, and I look back and I give myself a little grace, and I tell myself that I wouldn't act that way. And that was just me being a teenager. And I told my mom, like, I was such a brat. Like you dealt with such a just a headache of a kid sometimes. And it's because she tried so hard and I didn't know the reasoning behind everything, that when I'm in high school and I see all my friends doing all these things, we're just happy to have a roof over our heads. And then so when it's like that poor kid that goes to his rich friend's house and you just see how much everybody has. And you're like, man, like what, why am I so without? Why do I have to appreciate the little things? And then I think that's where some of the resentment came, is when I was older, and my mom and I definitely bumped heads at that point, because it was just us, it was just her and I. Eventually we had some friends come over, smoothed it out. But when I was younger, going through it, we were partners, is what she told me. So my job was to go to school, get an education. Her job was to figure out where we're going to stay. And to my eyes, school was tough. So I was like, all right, I got it. I'll do school. I'm not getting paid. You're still out here doing as much as you can to get us somewhere to stay. But there was never any resentment there, because I felt like it was teamwork to get us in a better position. And so, I was my mom, but that was like my partner in crime as well. And I was her Robin, I guess.
Well, that's awesome. And, like all life, things evolve and change. And when you think you're never going to get out of it, all of a sudden a person comes into your life, a circumstance happens, and then, presto, and things can change. And it sounded like that happened to you when you were introduced to the Challenge Athlete Foundation. So first of all, what is that, and who introduced you to that organization?
So the way it went was I won't forget this. My mom and I were catching the trolley downtown San Diego, and there were two trolleys coming, one from one direction, the other from the other direction. Um, and there's this lady named Marla Knox who saw us from across the train tracks, and I guess she spotted my leg, and she like ran in between these two trolleys, like as they're coming in. But it was close. She definitely was like playing Frogger with these trolleys. And I I remember looking at my mom and she looked at me and I was like, "What's wrong with this lady? Is she like coming to get us?" Or and she's like, "Oh my God, have you heard of the Challenge Athlete Foundation?" And we're just sitting there like, "No, we don't know what you're talking about, lady. We just saw you almost lose your life, though." That's what we're thinking. And she was like, "Oh, you should definitely get involved with disabled sports, disabled services, and then we'll introduce you to the Challenge Athletes Foundation." So I get involved in adaptive sport from there. Meeting her, I got started doing hand cycling, played wheelchair basketball, wheelchair rugby, and for a kid who had never done sports at this time, I was like 8, maybe a little younger. I think I was 7, maybe. Um, I had just never done anything active. Like I would play at PE back in school, but when it came to team sport, I was usually left out. Um, so with that, to finally be in a program where I have all these different sports that I can do without any limitations, I would describe it as if you put your child in every sport to let them try and see what fits for them, and then just watch them grow and develop as a person through that. And then eventually I found my sport. I met Challenge Athletes Foundation. I got introduced to Rudy Garcia Tolson, who is also a double above knee amputee. And at the time, I had never seen anybody like me, let alone a child. The same as myself. So with that, having that exposure and having that like seeing what they're doing with triathlon and disabled sports and adaptive sports, excuse me. And then seeing what Rudy was doing with his goal for Paralympic swimming, and knowing that this was all available to me when I thought that I couldn't even participate. It was definitely just like world changing for both myself and my mom. For her, she got to see her child be a child. Just kind of. I had been so many years of living with a disability, and there's so many individuals that would tell me like, "Oh man, I couldn't do that," or "Oh man, that seems rough," and I'm just like, "Yeah, that's my life." It's not. It's the way I look at it now, especially being involved with CAF. Like once you learn that everybody's walking through their own journey, through their own walk of life in some kind of way, regardless if they have disabilities or not. Everybody is so different in various reasons, you know. And once I kind of understood that and realized that okay, I can do whatever sport I want to do. Let's see what works for me. And that's where everything escalated. My mom and I we ended up moving to Alabama. We're still homeless for a few months out there. But it's cheaper to live.
Wait. Oh, you moved to Alabama because it was cheaper to live than California.
Yeah. So right around the time we got started with CAF, we got into track, hand cycling. They got me my first hand cycle, my first pair of running blades, and eventually swim lessons. And it's not till later in life that I realized they were grooming me to do an Ironman, but that's besides the point. And it's for me, running was definitely like the first thing I took to. Having my running blades and being used to walking on walking legs, it was just a completely different walk of life. Because the running legs don't have knees; they're very springy. There's a few clips on YouTube if you all want to check it out from my Ironman race. You can get an idea. It's like somebody running on pogo sticks. That really kind of set me off to just do more with not just people with disabilities, but able-bodied kids. I knew now I could move, so I would find a way. Hand cycling was fun. I never really enjoyed a bike before then. And then swimming, I was terrified of the water. I had a huge phobia. And I think that just came from being worried and thinking that I wouldn't be okay if something happened if I fell near the water. And so once I got lessons from CAF, my swim coach, Alan Voisard, taught me the basics. I go to him today if I have any questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that freedom that I got from swimming after being afraid of it for so long was next level. So these are definitely the things that I took with me to Alabama. And then once I got there, I got involved with the Lakeshore Foundation, who has also worked with the Challenge Athletes Foundation. They're located in Birmingham, Alabama, and they had adaptive programs running through that whole place. So I now had a team that I could grow and develop with in wheelchair basketball, and then eventually swimming, which were the two sports that I was a little indecisive with.
That's incredible. And when did you run your first Ironman? Maybe it's the only Ironman, but when did you run in that?
So I didn't compete in my first Ironman until I was 27.
27 years old. And how old are you now?
I'm 29. I'll be 30 this year.
Okay, so it was a couple of years ago, and I did see that YouTube video. And the thing that was really interesting, as I was watching, as a wide receiver, so I running a lot, sprints and that type of thing. But it seemed like you're really swinging your hips around as you're coming in. And as I was looking at that, I was interested because I was thinking, wouldn't that displace your hips and create soreness and everything else? But obviously you're flying down the track and you're doing everything great. But it was interesting the way your style of swinging your hips around as you came into the finish line there.
And because we don't have the knees in our running blades, that's why. But with that being said, you're right. There's individuals who have made knees for running blades so that you can run in the proper form. I've been running this way since I was 10, and I don't know if my legs have just kind of developed to maneuver that way. Because even when I walk on my walking leg, there's times where I'm kind of swinging out, but I notice it's usually when I'm getting tired. So I don't know. I tend to, I know that because I'm using prosthetics in this manner, my lower back and my hips down the line need to be, I'm trying to be big on prehab, so I don't have to go to rehab. I'm very much, I'm very much, I try to play it safe, be healthy. I try to take care of myself. But that's one of the things is, constant wear of prosthetics and use like that, especially doing an Ironman. You're going to get some wear and tear in your hips and your lower back.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. So you have also become a Paralympic athlete. Is that current today? Where is that in the timeline of all this?
So I am a Paralympian in training, PIT. So I have been training for Paralympic swimming since I was 16. So I got a grant through the Paralympic Academy, which was at the time located here at the U.S. Olympic Paralympic Training Center. And they took a group of us who were potential Paralympians to Beijing for the 2008 Paralympic Games. And life-changing for me. Oh my God, it was such a good time. Going to that event and seeing people that I knew competing and racing and just having a good time, that sealed the deal for me. It's like, okay, I want to go to Paralympics. But now what sport do I want to do? Because at the time I'm playing wheelchair basketball and I'm swimming. So at 16, I'm still like playing wheelchair basketball through high school. But once, I think I was my senior year, I dropped basketball and started swimming more. Because I knew I can go to college for swimming. I knew I could go further with swimming. With wheelchair basketball, it was definitely more competitive. And I was so in love with the pool that I was like, I can see myself doing this as well. Tough choice though at the time. So as time went on, I went to college, trained in college. I went to the 2012 trials, very green, like I didn't expect to do well. 2016 trials, I think I missed the cutoff time by 1 second. And then 2021 trials comes around, and it's just a completely different scenario at this point. Because in 2019, I did the Ironman. So that whole year of 2019 kind of changed my trajectory when it came to swimming. I left the training center in 2018, and moved to New York, started training there as well as coaching, and working at an endurance training studio. And I got invited to go to the Oceanside half Ironman, which is, I think, April of 2019. I got to swim the half, which was 1.2 miles. I had a relay partner do the 56-mile bike ride, and then I did the 13.1 mile half marathon. My first time running a half marathon. The longest I had ran before then was 6 miles. And I think I went like an hour 39. And in that time, I surprised myself. I never, distance running wasn't something I did. So once that happened, it opened the doors to what you do in Ironman if you were invited. And I was like, yeah, I would want to do a hand bike because, yeah, I've heard horror stories of athletes who are double above knee riding a standard bike. And it's tough. It's very tough, And I knew what this day held if I did an Ironman, and I knew I could rely on my arms to get me there. I didn't want to, I wanted to give myself every opportunity I could. So July comes around. I get a slot from Ironman to compete at the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. But this is 3 months before the race, and I don't own a bike. I've only been swimming and running. And thankfully, Challenge Athletes Foundation, CAF, they got me my first kneeler hand cycle. And from then, I just got on the bike. And if most athletes know, whatever your weakest discipline is, that's the one you need to do the most. Mm-hmm. So swimming was my strongest, running kind of my middle ground, and the bike was just, I needed to work on it. But it was my first time having a kneeler, and it was different from the bike that I'd originally got from CAF when I was younger. The kneeler kind of straps you in at the stumps, right where my legs are. So I'm sitting down almost in a tight bucket, and you're engaging your whole body into every stroke. So my face is like getting really close to the wheel, and I just had so much fun doing it. I was like, wow, this is something I didn't know was available to me, something I didn't know I would enjoy this much. And leading up to Kona, I put on so many hours just on the bike that I was obsessed with the bike. Like, I loved cycling. And it was just the same way that I found my freedom with swimming and running, honestly, is the same way that once I got comfortable with my new bike, it was something that became a newfound freedom. And I that led me to October 12th, 2019, Ironman World Championships, which was just an extremely long day. Yeah. Extremely hard and long day. Took me a total of 16 hours and 26 minutes.
Yeah, that's a long time to be out there to do anything physical, but you did it. That's something that matters. You look back. So tell me that. Let's fast forward to today. Okay, so you had this adversity, but you really didn't know any different when you were growing up. And then you discovered sports. Sports obviously has had an incredible impact on your life in terms of you really having limitless boundaries in what you can do, doing things that most people don't even do with, 2 legs and the whole thing. But what does your life look like today?
So today I am, like I spoke to you before, I'm living in Colorado Springs. I'm training for paracycling now. I have switched from paraswimming, which was a fun career, introduced me to a lot of people, a lot of lifelong friends. And it was from 16 to 27, 28. Oh, 28. So 12 years of Paralympic training in swimming. I represented USA on 3 national teams, my highest being World Championships. And just after Kona, I just loved the bike a lot, but I didn't want to, it's strange, I didn't want to stop training for the Paralympics and swimming in the middle of the quad. 2020, obviously they canceled the Paralympics, pushed it back a year, and I thought, okay, I can swim as well as ride, and I'll be ready. Swimming and cycling together is tough because swimming is a sport that I'm naturally just lean. The more you do it, the more your body just kind of molds to that form. And then hand cycling, is the complete opposite. It builds so much mass, so much strength. So the two kind of countered each other, and it was tough because I knew that swimming was going to be done. I hadn't been classified for one, so I knew I wasn't going to go to the Paralympics if I couldn't even qualify. And I wasn't anywhere near the speed that I needed to be. So it's like, well, this might be it for swimming, but I can't be too upset because of the time that I spent, the trips that I've taken, and the fact that if I didn't have that endurance from swimming, I don't think I would have finished Ironman. Before moving to New York, I was doing 10,000 meters a day, or at least every other day. And it was nothing, at that point. It was like fun,
Mm-hmm.
And so having that in my back pocket, kind of helped propel me towards finishing the Ironman, and then learning about cycling, and then learning about paracycling, and just kind of opening the field to a new frontier. So that's what I'm doing out here. I'm training for the Paralympics in cycling. Also working on a book, which I'll keep you posted. Hopefully I can get you a copy.
Sure.
It's very much in its raw stages. I just spoke to my literary agent yesterday, and he said that this week and next week we'll be sending out submissions. So hopefully we hear back with a decent proposition. And then from there, it's living life, pretty much. Trying to do the best I can.
That's awesome. Look, man, it takes a lot of, I said this before, but I gotta say it again, it takes a lot of grit and determination, because it would have been so easy on so many multiple occasions for you just to throw the towel in, and it's too hard, why me, play the blame game, all that kind of stuff, but that just doesn't serve any purpose, and it doesn't push you forward. And the only person that loses in all that game is you. And you didn't do that. You did just the opposite. You've continued to challenge yourself and push yourself to new limits. And, that's one of the reasons why you're a bright light. And, so much of life, I'm telling you something, I've talked to others where we've started off the podcast and they've said, I have an attitude. What are you thankful for? I've got an attitude of gratitude. And you seem so grateful for the people that surround you, for the circumstances you're in, for the life that you're going after. And for that, man, I tip my hat to you and say congratulations. And I'm so blessed that we were introduced, 1 degree of separation by Paul McDonald. And that was teed up for us to have this chat. So thank you for that. Where can people find you?
So if you have Instagram, my Instagram handle is rsewell92. So pretty much my first initial R, and then my last name Sewell, Sewell 92. And then on Facebook is Roderick Sewell Jackson.
There he is. That's where you can reach him. And folks, I would definitely look into this guy's story. Check him out on YouTube. It's pretty cool what he's been up to. And so on that note, I will say thank you so much. The podcast will come out in a couple of weeks. We'll promote all this different stuff, and just so appreciate. And it always puts my life in perspective when I talk to really inspirational people like you. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
Okay, there he is, the one, the only Roderick Sewell.